Okay, picture this. You haven't eaten in 2 days. You know exactly where the herd is, you tracked it all yesterday, you've mapped out the entire route in your head, and now literally all you have to do is get there. And then, it starts raining. Now this isn't some light, pleasant drizzle. This is a heavy, soaking, wind-driven rain that just doesn't stop. It goes all day, then all night, then the next morning. You can't hunt. The mud has completely washed away the tracks. You can't even move through the open because bare feet on wet, rocky terrain means a twisted ankle. And out here, a twisted ankle is basically a death sentence. The river is rising. You are not bored. You're trapped. You see, for most of human history, rain wasn't just some minor inconvenience. It was an absolute high-stakes crisis. Think about what happens today when it rains. What do? You close your window, maybe make some hot coffee, grab a cozy blanket, and fire up Netflix, right? You just sink right into the couch. Rain is just calming background noise for us. But for a human being living 50,000 years ago, that exact same sound you fall asleep to, that was a countdown. It was a massive weather event that could kill you in 3 completely different ways before the storm even broke.
Section 1. The deadly prehistoric rain, a deadly crisis.
To really understand our ancestors, we have to grasp what a storm actually did to their environment. It essentially took the entire wild world and compressed it into tiny, claustrophobic spaces, creating a terrifying variety of threats. First off, cold. A wet human loses body heat up to 25 times faster than a dry one. So, without waterproof clothing, a long rainstorm and anything below 50 degrees Fahrenheit could drop your core temperature straight into hypothermia within just hours. Second, you've got flooding. Early humans naturally lived in caves at the base of hillsides or right near rivers, and archaeologists have literally found thick layers of flood sediment inside occupied caves, meaning flash floods swept right through their living rooms. And third, and honestly maybe the most terrifying, predators. Rain drove animals indoors too. Over in South Africa, archaeologists have found human remains and large cat remains in the exact same cave layers. Some of those human skulls actually have puncture marks that match leopard teeth perfectly. Rain forced humans, predators, and prey to squeeze into the exact same dry spaces.
Section 2. Guarding the flame, survival priority. So, let's say you survive the immediate rush for shelter. Zooming in from the massive macro threat of the storm outside to the micro focus inside the cave, one job mattered more than absolutely anything else, and that was the campfire. Before, roughly 40,000 years ago, creating a fire from scratch, out of nothing, was incredibly difficult. Most people probably couldn't even do it reliably. So if your fire went out, you were in massive, massive trouble. People would literally carry smoldering coals wrapped in leaves just to keep the ember alive while moving. Take Otzi the Iceman, the famous frozen man found in the Alps. Even just 5,300 years ago, he carried a highly dedicated fire kit. He had flint, iron pyrite for striking sparks, a plant backup, and tinder fungus. That's a woody mushroom that could catch a spark and just smolder inside itself for hours. It was essentially a prehistoric biological lighter. Because losing fire, that was a fatal mistake. When that rain hit, saving the fire became an incredibly intense process. First, you have to move it deeper into the cave to protect it. Then, you've got to feed it. You'd scavenge dead lower branches from coniferous trees because the thick canopy above kept them relatively dry. You'd have to physically split open wet logs just to get at the dry wood hidden inside. And you'd use birch bark as kindling, which is actually amazing because birch contains a chemical called butylene that allows it to burn even when it is soaking wet. Think about that. One person's entire job during a storm was just to sit there and guard that flame because it was your warmth, it was your light, and it was your safety.
Section 3. The rainy day workshop. Forced downtime. Okay, so the fire is secured. You're warm, you're dry, but you cannot leave. You are totally stuck indoors for days. So what on earth do you do with all that forced downtime? Well, you make things. The archaeological record proves that these caves were packed with manufacturing evidence. Over at Blombos Cave, dating back 100,000 years, we see an ochre pigment processing workshop, an actual, deliberate system for manufacturing paint. Jump to 77,000 years ago at Sabudu Cave, and we see layers of bedding using Cape laurel leaves, which acts as a natural insect repellent. That is literally prehistoric pest control. 61,000 years ago, we start seeing delicate bone needles that would take intense, focused hours to carve. And at Abri Damaras, 52,000 years ago, we find the oldest direct evidence of string. Just think about that for a second. Twisting plant fibers into string or rope is a slow, highly repetitive process that requires immense patience. It's the perfect bad weather task. Whoever invented string almost certainly did it while stuck inside waiting out a storm. Section 4. The spark of culture. Beyond survival.
Up to this point, we've talked mostly about practical survival and toolmaking. But as the rain pounded outside and that fire flickered, something profound shifted. The whole narrative moved from basic survival to the actual birth of human culture. And this brings us to the art. The Chauvet Cave in France has these absolutely stunning 36,000-year-old paintings of lions, rhinos, and bears. The artists understood anatomy, they understood mid-stride movement, but what's truly mind-blowing here is where these paintings actually are. They're not right at the entrance where you just sit for shelter. They are deep, sometimes hundreds of meters deep, into narrow passages in total pitch-black darkness. Somebody had to literally crawl in there carrying an animal fat lamp just to paint. You don't do that on a beautiful sunny day when the hunting is good, right? You do that when you've been stuck inside for days, you've already sharpened every single tool you own, and you just have this incredible rainy day burst of creativity.
Which leads perfectly to this incredible sociological shift. Back in 2014, anthropologist Polly Weissner published a fascinating study on the Juansi Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert. She found that during the day, their conversations were highly practical, complaints, land rights, resource management, but at night, forced around the glow of the fire, over 80% of the conversation completely shifted to stories, songs, and ceremonies. 80%.
The campfire really was the original social network. The firelight physically softened faces and reduced group tension in these confined, stressful spaces. This is where 15 to 30 people, trapped together, shared the data that literally kept them alive. Where do the water sources dry up? Which plants are safe to eat? How exactly do you track a specific animal? They shared critical survival knowledge, and then they shared myths, explanations for why the rain comes and goes. The rich culture behind campfire stories wasn't just born out of entertainment, it was born out of the pure necessity of being stuck indoors together.
And the immense power of this campfire storytelling is totally measurable. The oldest known oral traditions that we've actually verified against real geological events are Australian Aboriginal stories. These stories describe actual, dramatic sea level changes that happened roughly 7,000 years ago. That geological data survived perfectly for 7 millennia, just through people telling it to each other over and over again. That level of deep cultural memory only develops when a group is forced to spend enormous amounts of time just sitting together around a fire. Those rainy days weren't dead time for our ancestors, they were transmission time.
Section 5. After the storm, a changed world. Eventually, of course, the rain does stop, and when humans finally emerged from the cave, blinking into the light, they didn't step out into some ruined wasteland. They stepped into a radically transformed, totally resource-rich environment. The rain actually left behind massive advantages. Think about it. The ground is now soft mud, which means animal tracks are perfectly clear and highly detailed. Natural rock depressions are suddenly filled with clean drinking water. Tubers are way easier to dig out of the wet soil, and mushrooms just explode across the landscape. And here's a wild detail for you. In tropical Africa, termites actually swarm right after a heavy rain. They are incredibly protein-dense, and the best part, you don't even need weapons to hunt them. You literally just pick them up. Early humans, much like chimpanzees do today, almost certainly gorged on these massive termite swarms. The groups that understood these post-rain changes held an enormous, game-changing survival advantage.
Section 6. Conclusion. Downtime is creation.
So throughout this explainer, we've journeyed from the sheer terrifying threat of a prehistoric storm, down to the flicker of a single birch bark fire, through the meticulous invention of string, and deep into the profound depths of human storytelling. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that downtime was never dead time for our ancestors. It was the literal crucible of human creativity and collective memory. The culture behind campfire stories, every tool, every piece of sewn clothing, every myth passed down, and every painting hidden deep on a cave wall, it all came from the hours when they just couldn't go outside. When your survival completely depends on what you do next, you don't get bored. You get incredibly creative. Ancient humans literally built our culture while waiting out the rain. Which leaves us with just one question. What are you doing with your boredom?